The crystal towers of Zephyr Prime glowed with a pale blue light as Elder Kithara watched the star charts with growing fear. 3 more colonies had gone dark in the past week. The Void Swarm was moving faster than anyone had predicted. "Show me the outer rim again," Kithara said to the technician beside her. The holographic display flickered and changed. Where the colony of New Haven should have been, there was only empty space. The swarm had consumed everything. Planets, moons, even the star itself. Nothing remained but cold darkness. "How long until they reach the core systems?" Kithara asked. 14 days, Elder. Maybe less if they keep accelerating. Kithara closed her eyes. Her people had built a peaceful civilization across 47 star systems. They traded in knowledge and energy crystals. They had no weapons, no armies. Violence was something they had left behind thousands of years ago when they evolved beyond physical bodies and became beings of pure, crystalline energy. The Void Swarm cared nothing for their peaceful nature. The parasitic entities fed on energy itself. To them, the Zephyrian Collective was not a civilization to negotiate with. They were simply food. "Any response from the Galactic Council?" Kithara asked. The technician's light dimmed with sadness. The hegemony expressed their sympathy but said, "They cannot spare ships for a conflict so far from their territory. The Kraturi warlords laugh and call us weak for not having weapons. The Builder Empire says this is a natural process and they will not interfere." Kithara felt anger pulse through her crystalline form. The great powers of the galaxy had failed them. The very civilizations they had traded with and helped for centuries now turned away when the Zephyrians needed help most. What about the other species? The smaller ones? The Aquatic Federation says their ships cannot travel this far from water worlds. The hive minds are dealing with their own territorial disputes. The Silicon Brotherhood. They simply stopped responding to our messages. Kithara moved to the communication console. Her people were going to die. All of them. 47 worlds. Full of billions of Zephyrians would be consumed by the swarm. Their art, their music, their 1,000-year-old libraries of knowledge, all would vanish as if they had never existed. "Open a general broadcast channel," she ordered. "Maximum range." "Elder, that will drain our energy reserves significantly." "Do it." The technician obeyed. Across the communications array, power flowed into the transmitters. The signal would reach every corner of the galaxy, even the unexplored regions beyond the spiral arms. Kithara began to speak. Her words carried the weight of desperation and the dignity of a dying people. To any civilization capable of military action, this is Elder Kithara of the Zephyrian Collective. "We are under attack by the Void Swarm. They've already consumed 3 of our colonies and are advancing toward our core systems. We have 14 days, perhaps less, before our entire civilization is destroyed." She paused, gathering her strength. "We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons to defend ourselves. We offer our most precious resource to any who can help us. Our pure energy crystals can power a fleet for centuries. They can fuel the largest ships or the most advanced technology. We offer half of our total reserves to any civilization that can stop the swarm." The transmission continued for several minutes. Kithara explained their location, the nature of the threat, and exactly what they could offer in return for help. When she finished, the communication array fell silent. "Send that message every hour," she ordered. "Until we receive an answer or until the swarm reaches us." Days passed. The Void Swarm continued its advance. 2 more outer colonies went dark. The swarm was now only 8 days away from the populated inner systems. Some responses did come. The hegemony sent formal regrets. Several smaller civilizations offered to accept Zephyrian refugees, but admitted they could not fight the swarm. A few individual ship captains offered to help evacuate important cultural artifacts. On the 6th day, When hope had almost died completely, something unexpected happened. "Elder," the communication technician called out with excitement. "We have a response to our distress call." "From whom?" "The signature is strange. It says, Terran Expeditionary Force. They're transmitting from a star system in the outer spiral arm." Tithara had never heard of these Terrans. She accessed the Galactic database and found almost nothing. The system was marked with a warning label. "Quarantine Deathworld. Do not approach." "What does their message say?" she asked. The technician looked confused. "It's very short, Elder. It says, received. En route. Prepare coordinates for fleet deployment." "That's all?" "Yes, Elder. But there's something else. The system they're transmitting from. According to the navigation charts, it would take most species at least 3 weeks to reach us from there, even at maximum hyperspace speed. And they're saying they'll be here in 6 days. Kithara felt a chill run through her crystalline form. What kind of species could travel so much faster than everyone else? She accessed the database again, searching for any information about Terrans or their home system. What she found made her more worried, not less. The system was classified as a Category 12 Deathworld. She had never seen a rating that high. Most civilizations avoided anything above Category 3. The notation said the planet was actively hostile to all known forms of life, and that the indigenous species should be considered extremely dangerous. There were fragments of intercepted communications from deep space traders, references to creatures that hunted other predators for sport and thrived in environments that would kill most sapient beings within minutes. One report mentioned that the planet's surface was mostly covered in a universal solvent that the natives somehow consumed for survival. "Elder, should we respond to them?" the technician asked. Kithara stared at the data. Her people were about to be destroyed by the Void Swarm. These Terrans might be dangerous, but they were offering help when no one else would. "Send them our coordinates," she decided, "and transmit all our data on the Void Swarm's current position and behavior patterns." "Yes, Elder." As the message was sent, Kithara wondered if she had just saved her people or simply chosen the manner of their destruction. But with the swarm only days away, any hope was better than none. In the depths of space, something was coming to help them. Whether it would prove to be salvation or a different kind of doom remained to be seen. The intelligence division of the Galactic Hegemony worked around the clock as news of the Terran response spread across civilized space. Director Vex High, a tall insectoid being with compound eyes, stood before a wall of data screens showing everything they had managed to gather about this mysterious species. "What do we know so far?" he asked his team of analysts. Senior Analyst Mothra, a gray-skinned humanoid, consulted her tablet. "Very little, Director. The Terran home system has been marked as quarantined for over 2 centuries. No official contact has been made with them." "But they have interstellar travel?" "Yes, Director. Deep space sensors have detected their ships in remote sectors, but they avoid contact with other civilizations. They seem to prefer isolated systems." Vex High clicked his mandibles in thought. "Show me what we know about their world." The main screen changed to display a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. Warning symbols flashed around the image. "Sol 3, also called Earth by the natives," Mothra explained. "Category 12 Deathworld. The highest rating we've ever assigned." 12? Vex High was shocked. "What makes it so dangerous?" "Where do we start?" "The planet is covered with a substance they call water. It's a universal solvent that dissolves most materials. The natives drink it." Another analyst, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Bloomer, added more details. "The atmosphere is 21% oxygen, Director. That's enough to cause firestorms on most worlds. The natives breathe it like we breathe normal air. The gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, Mothra continued. That would crush most of our species. The planet also has extreme weather patterns. Hurricanes with winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can destroy entire cities. Lightning storms that could power our largest ships. Vexai stared at the data. And the natives survive in these conditions? More than survive, Director. They thrive. But that's not the worst part. Continue. Bloomer floated closer to the screen. The planet is full of predators, Director. Large carnivorous animals with claws and teeth that hunt other creatures for food. The natives call them bears, lions, sharks, crocodiles. But here's the strange part. The humans hunt these predators. What do you mean? They hunt the hunters, Director. For sport. They take weapons and go into the wilderness to track down creatures that could kill them, just for the challenge of it. Mothra pulled up more data. We've intercepted some of their entertainment broadcasts. They watch recordings of humans fighting these predators with their bare hands. They call it wrestling alligators or shark diving. They seem to think it's fun. Vexai felt his exoskeleton shiver. What kind of species fought deadly predators for entertainment? What about their technology? He asked. Advanced, but focused on warfare, Bloomer reported. We've detected energy signatures consistent with nuclear weapons. Lots of them. They seem to have enough to destroy their own planet several times over. They have enough nuclear weapons to commit planetary suicide? Yes, Director. But they've never used them against each other on a large scale. They seem to have some kind of agreement limiting their use. They call it mutually assured destruction. Vexai was confused. They're threatening to destroy themselves to prevent wars? It appears so, Director. Another screen activated, showing intercepted communications from the approaching Terran fleet. The translation systems had been working to decode their language. We've been monitoring their internal communications, Mothra said. The things they discuss casually are disturbing. The speakers crackled with translated human voices. Admiral, what's our acceptable casualty rate for this operation? Anything under 60% is manageable, Captain. We've handled worse odds. Roger that. Should I prep the area denial weapons? Affirmative. Full sterilization protocols, if needed. We can't let any of these things reach civilian populations. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They're discussing acceptable losses of 60%, Vexai whispered. What kind of military force considers losing more than half their people acceptable? There's more, Director, Bloomer said nervously. They keep referring to something called the Geneva Conventions. What is that? From what we can determine, they're rules they created for warfare. Limits on what weapons they can use and how they conduct battles. Vexai was baffled. They have rules to limit their own destructive power? Yes, but Director, that's what makes it so terrifying. If these are the rules that limit them, what are they capable of without limits? More intercepted communications played through the speakers. Weapons hot, all ships. Remember the rules of engagement. Nothing that violates the conventions. Copy that, Admiral. Proportional response only. And remember, boys, we're here to help civilians. That means no collateral damage. I don't want to see a single non-combatant casualty in the after-action reports. Vexai listened with growing dread. The humans spoke of rules and proportional responses, but they were heading to fight a threat that had consumed entire star systems. How proportional could their response be? Director, Mothra said quietly. There's something else. The ship names. Show me. A list appeared on the screen. Inevitable consequence. Proportional response. Necessary evil. Final warning. Last resort. Acceptable losses. These names, Vexai said slowly, they're not just ship names. They're statements of intent. It gets worse, Director. We've detected communication protocols that suggest they're preparing for something called total warfare. What does that mean? We don't know exactly, but they keep using terms like complete elimination and absolute victory. They seem to believe that if you're going to fight, you fight until the enemy cannot fight anymore. Bloomer added. They also keep mentioning historical human conflicts. Something called World War II, where they apparently fought against their own species, using every weapon they had except those nuclear devices. They fought a global war against themselves? Yes, Director. And won by completely destroying their enemy's ability to fight. They called it unconditional surrender. Vexai looked at all the data surrounding him. A species from a death world, casually discussing casualty rates that would horrify most civilizations. Armed with weapons designed to destroy planets. Heading to fight an enemy that had consumed 3 star systems. Send a priority message to all hegemony fleet commanders, he ordered. Pull back all ships from the Zephyrian sector. Establish a quarantine perimeter at least 5 light years out. Director, the Zephyrians asked for help. Shouldn't we warn them? Vexai looked at the approaching trajectory of the human fleet on his screens. Warn them about what? They asked for help, and they're getting it. The only question is whether there will be anything left when the humans are finished. The room fell quiet as they watched the data streams showing the Terran fleet approaching Zephyrian space. Soon, the galaxy would see what happened when a species evolved for war decided to help. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Zephyrian territory, exactly when they had promised. Elder Cathara watched from the command center as 12 massive ships appeared on their sensors. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. Where most starships were elegant curves and smooth surfaces, the human vessels looked like floating weapons platforms. Angular armor plating covered every surface. Weapon ports dotted their hulls like dark eyes. They moved with a precision that spoke of military discipline. Open a communication channel, Cathara ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the lead human ship. The being who appeared was smaller than Cathara had expected, but there was something unsettling about the way she carried herself. Her skin was pale, her hair was dark, and her eyes held a coldness that seemed to look right through everything. I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Expeditionary Force, the human said. Her voice was calm and professional. We received your distress call. Can you confirm the current position of the hostile force? Yes, Admiral Chun. I am Elder Cathara. The swarm is currently 3 days from our outer defense perimeter. They have consumed 5 of our colonies and show no signs of slowing. Chun nodded. Understood. We'll need detailed scans of their movement patterns and any tactical data you've gathered. Also, I need a complete list of your population centers. Population centers? Cathara felt uneasy. May I ask why? Strategic value assessment, Chun replied without hesitation. We need to know which targets the enemy will prioritize and which locations require the highest level of protection. Cathara's crystalline form dimmed slightly. The way Chun talked about her people's homes as targets made her nervous. But the humans had come to help when no one else would. Of course, Admiral. We'll transmit all our data immediately. Good. I also need permission to deploy area denial weapons around your evacuation routes. Area denial weapons? Cathara's voice carried clear worry now. Standard protocol, Chun said casually. We'll create killing fields to channel enemy movement and protect civilian corridors. Don't worry, we'll coordinate with your evacuation plans. The way the humans spoke about killing fields as standard protocol made Cathara's energy flicker with fear. What exactly had they invited into their space? Admiral, if I may ask, what is your plan for dealing with the swarm? Chun's expression didn't change. Total elimination. We'll implement sterilization protocols across all infected zones. The enemy will be completely neutralized. Sterilization protocols. Complete destruction of all hostile entities and their support structures. No survivors, no chance for regrouping. When we're done, the threat will be permanently eliminated. Tithara felt a chill run through her crystalline matrix. The human spoke of complete destruction as if it were routine. What had she done to her people? Across the galaxy, other civilizations were monitoring the human communications with growing alarm. In the Hegemony Intelligence Center, Director Vex High listened to the intercepted conversation with mounting horror. "Did you hear that?" he asked his team. "Complete elimination. Sterilization protocols. They're planning to destroy everything in the affected area." "Director," Analyst Mothra said nervously, "they're asking for population center locations." "That's not for protection. That's target assessment. And area denial weapons," Bloomer added. "They're going to turn Zephyrian space into a war zone." More human communications were being intercepted and translated. "Captain Morrison, have your Marines prepped for boarding actions?" "Yes, Admiral. Full combat loadouts. We've briefed them on close quarters combat in zero atmosphere." "Good. Remember, if we have to board those swarm vessels, it's likely a one-way trip. Make sure your people understand the sacrifice they're making." "Understood, Admiral. My Marines know what they signed up for." Vex High listened in disbelief. "They're planning to board the swarm ships? That's suicide. No one has ever survived direct contact with those entities." "Director," Mothra whispered, "I don't think they care about surviving." Back in Zephyrian space, Kithara was having her own doubts about her decision. The human admiral had requested increasingly disturbing things. Permission to use enhanced interrogation techniques on any captured swarm entities. Authorization to deploy tactical nuclear devices if conventional weapons failed. Access to Zephyrian shipping lanes for strategic resource denial. "Elder," her communication officer called out, "we're receiving reports from our border systems. Several civilian transports are requesting immediate evacuation clearance." "Why?" "The swarm isn't there yet." "They're not fleeing the swarm, Elder. They're fleeing the humans. The refugees say the human scouts are marking their ships with some kind of targeting system." Kithara's worst fears were coming true. "Open a channel to Admiral Chun." Chun's face appeared on the screen again, still wearing that cold, professional expression. "Admiral, our civilian ships are reporting that your forces are marking them with targeting systems. Can you explain this?" "Standard identification protocol," Chun replied. "We need to distinguish between civilian and military vessels for our engagement protocols." "But why would you need to target civilian ships?" "We don't target civilians, Elder. The marking system ensures our weapon systems recognize them as protected assets. It's for their safety." The explanation sounded reasonable, but something in Chun's tone made Kithara more nervous. Not less than another human officer appeared on Chun's bridge. "Admiral, we've completed the tactical assessment. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. Chun nodded. "Authorized. Begin preparation for Total War Doctrine." The communication ended, leaving Kithara staring at a blank screen. Total War Doctrine. The humans hadn't just come to fight the swarm. They had come to wage total war in emergency session chambers across the galaxy. The great civilizations were reaching the same conclusion. "The cure is worse than the disease," declared Hegemon Prime. "These humans are going to destroy everything in that sector." The Krathuri War Council, despite their own violent nature, were equally disturbed. "Even we do not speak so casually of total destruction," War Leader Gorthik declared. "These humans are beyond savage." The Builder Emperor, ancient and wise, made the most chilling observation of all. "The Void Swarm consumes energy and matter. These humans seem to consume hope itself." As the human fleet moved closer to Zephyrian space, one thing became clear to everyone watching. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. The question was whether anyone would survive to remember it. Cathara stood in her command center, watching the approaching human ships and the advancing void swarm. In her desperation to save her people, she had invited a force that spoke of war as others spoke of weather. Tomorrow, the battle would begin, and she was no longer sure which side frightened her more. The battle began at dawn on Zephyr Prime, though dawn and dusk meant little in the depths of space. The void swarm had reached the outer defense perimeter, a writhing mass of dark energy that consumed everything in its path. Behind it lay empty space where once 5 thriving colonies had existed. Admiral Chun's fleet moved to intercept with a precision that was both beautiful and terrifying to watch. The 12 human ships formed a perfect battle line, their weapons charging with energies that made the space around them shimmer. All ships. This is Admiral Chun. Her voice echoed across the communications channels that every major civilization was monitoring. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Those creatures down there are counting on us to keep them safe. Elder Cathara watched from her command center, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. Around the galaxy, intelligence officers and military commanders leaned forward in their seats, waiting to see what the humans would do. The first human weapons that fired were not the massive ship killers that everyone expected. Instead, precise energy beams lanced out toward the swarm with surgical accuracy. But these weren't aimed at the main mass of creatures. They were hitting specific points around the edges, creating what looked like barriers. What are they doing? Cathara asked her tactical officer. It appears they're hurting the swarm, Elder, creating corridors. The realization hit her like a shockwave. The sterilization protocols Chun had mentioned weren't about destroying everything in sight. They were about steering the swarm away from populated areas. On board the human flagship, Chen was coordinating the battle with calm precision. Captain Morrison, deploy your Marines to Grid 7. We have swarm entities trying to break toward the civilian evacuation route. Copy that, Admiral. My boys are ready to hold the line. Morrison's voice carried no fear, only determination. His Marines were about to face creatures that had destroyed entire star systems, and he spoke as if he was asking them to guard a door. The first swarm entities to break through the energy barriers met something they had never encountered before. Human Marines in powered armor, armed with weapons that seemed designed for close-quarters combat against energy beings. What happened next shocked every observer. The Marines didn't try to destroy the swarm creatures from a safe distance. They charged directly into them, using their own bodies as barriers to prevent the entities from reaching the fleeing civilian ships. My God, whispered Director Vex High as he watched the tactical displays. They're using themselves as shields. One young Marine, Private Johnson, according to the intercepted communications, found himself surrounded by 3 swarm entities. His armor was failing, his weapons were nearly depleted, but a Zephyrian transport with 2,000 civilians was directly behind him. Admiral, this is Johnson. His voice crackled over the comm. I can't hold this position much longer. Permission to implement Emergency Protocol 12. There was a pause before Chun's voice came back, heavy with emotion. Permission granted, son. We'll make sure they remember you. Johnson's next words were broadcast across the galaxy. Tell my mom I did my job. The explosion that followed was visible from 3 star systems away. Johnson had detonated his ship's power core, taking the swarm entities with him and clearing the path for the civilian transport to escape. The battle continued for hours, and with each passing moment, the galaxy's understanding of humanity shifted. The area denial weapons Chen had deployed were revealed to be precision barriers that created safe passages for fleeing civilians. The acceptable casualty rates the humans discussed referred only to their own forces, never to the people they were protecting. Enhanced interrogation techniques turned out to be attempts to communicate with captured swarm entities, trying to understand them well enough to predict their movements and keep civilians safe. Captain Sarah Kim's destroyer, the final warning, had taken critical damage while protecting a Zephyrian research station. Her ship was dying, her crew was injured, but she refused to withdraw. "Admiral, the research station is still uploading their cultural archives," Kim reported. "If we pull back now, they'll lose 1,000 years of art and literature. Captain, your ship won't last another 10 minutes under that kind of fire." "Then we hold for 10 minutes, ma'am. These people's history is worth protecting." Across the galaxy, military analysts were frantically revising their assessments. The humans weren't savage destroyers. They were protectors willing to die for people they had never met. The turning point came when Admiral Chun made a decision that no other species in the galaxy could comprehend. A massive swarm concentration was advancing toward Zephyr Prime itself, and the only way to stop it was for her flagship to ram directly into the center of the mass. "All ships. This is Admiral Chun." Her voice was calm as she prepared to die. "Continue the evacuation. Don't let our sacrifice be wasted." "Admiral, no." Elder Cathara's voice broke through the military channels. "There has to be another way." Chun smiled, and for the first time, Cathara saw warmth in the human's eyes. "There's another way, Elder, but it would cost civilian lives. That's not acceptable." The flagship, Inevitable Consequence, began its final approach toward the swarm mass. Chun's crew, knowing they were about to die, sang something they called the Marine's Hymn. The words, translated for galactic audiences, spoke of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. At the last moment, something unexpected happened. The swarm, faced with an enemy that would rather die than retreat, began to withdraw. The entities had evolved to prey on beings that valued their own survival above all else. They had no strategy for dealing with creatures that placed others' lives above their own. "Admiral," her tactical officer called out, "the swarm is retreating. All concentrations are pulling back toward deep space." Chun ordered the fleet to pursue, not for vengeance, but to ensure the creatures could never threaten civilian populations again. When the battle was over 72 hours later, the Void Swarm had been completely eliminated. Half the human fleet was gone, but not a single Zephyrian civilian had died. As Chun's battered ships prepared to depart, she sent one final message to Elder Cathara. "The threat has been neutralized. Your people are safe. It was an honor to serve." That simple statement echoed across the galaxy. The humans hadn't fought for payment or glory. They had fought because it was the right thing to do. The species that everyone had feared as savage monsters had proven to be the galaxy's most noble protectors. Elder Cathara stared at the departing human ships, her crystalline form glowing brighter than it had in years. She finally understood what she had witnessed. The humans' casual discussion of death wasn't because they didn't value life. It was because they valued other people's lives more than their own. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the Battle of Zephyr Prime. Representatives from every major civilization sat in the Great Chamber on Council Station. But for the first time in centuries, they were not discussing trade disputes or territorial claims. They were trying to understand what they had witnessed. Elder Cathara stood at the center podium, her crystalline form glowing with a steady, peaceful light that hadn't been seen since before the swarm attacks began. "Honorable delegates," she began, "I stand before you to speak about the species we call human, and to correct the terrible misunderstanding that nearly led us to condemn our greatest protectors, Hegemon Prime. The insectoid leader of the most powerful empire in the galaxy shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Elder Kithara, we all observed the human military action. While we are grateful for their success, their methods were heroic, Kithara interrupted. That is the word you were looking for, Hegemon. Heroic. Director Vex High activated his holoprojector, displaying the intercepted human communications that had so frightened the intelligence community. Elder, you heard their casual discussions of acceptable casualty rates. 60% losses were considered manageable. Yes, Kithara agreed. 60% of their own forces. Not ours. Never ours. When Admiral Chun spoke of acceptable casualties, she meant how many of her own people she was willing to sacrifice to save mine. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. War leader Gorthuk of the Krathari, a species known for their own warrior culture, spoke next. But their weapons, their sterilization protocols, were used with surgical precision, Kithara replied. They destroyed the swarm completely while leaving every piece of our infrastructure intact. They turned sterilization from a word meaning total destruction into something meaning perfect protection. She activated her own display, showing the tactical recordings of the battle. Watch this, she said. The display showed Private Johnson's final moments, using his own life to clear a path for civilian evacuees. Or this. The image changed to Captain Kim's destroyer, holding position while taking fatal damage to protect the cultural archive. Or this. Admiral Chun's flagship, beginning its suicide run to save Zephyr Prime itself. These are not the actions of savage destroyers, Kithara continued. These are the actions of beings who place the lives of strangers above their own survival. The Builder Emperor, ancient and rarely given to emotion, leaned forward in his hover chair. But their technology, their weapons of mass destruction, are controlled by laws they call the Geneva Conventions, Kithara said. Rules that limit their own power to prevent harm to non-combatants. They created laws to restrict themselves because they feared their own strength might hurt innocent people. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had spent days fearing human savagery. Do you understand what this means? The most powerful military force we have ever encountered has voluntarily limited itself to protect others. They have weapons that could destroy planets, but they have laws that forbid using them against civilian targets. Bloomer, the jellyfish-like analyst, floated nervously near his delegation seats. But Elder, their casual attitude toward death, their acceptance of massive casualties, is what allows them to save others, Kithara replied. They accept that they might die because they refuse to let others die. That is not savagery. That is the highest form of civilization. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs as delegates tried to process this. Complete reversal of everything they thought. They knew about humans. HEMON Prime called for order. Elder Kithara, are you suggesting that we have misjudged this species entirely? I am not suggesting it, Hegemon. I am stating it as fact. She activated another recording, this one of Admiral Chun's final message. The threat has been neutralized. Your people are safe. It was an honor to serve. Listen to those words, Kithara said. She called protecting my people an honor. Not a duty, not an obligation. An honor. When have any of us ever considered protecting strangers to be an honor? The question hung in the air like a challenge. War leader Gorthuk stood slowly. The massive Krathori warrior was known for his pride and aggressive nature, but his voice was subdued when he spoke. The Krathiri Empire prides itself on military strength, he said. We have conquered 17 star systems and defeated countless enemies. But we fight for territory, for resources, for the glory of our people. He paused, his scaled features showing genuine emotion. We have never fought for strangers. We have never sacrificed our warriors to save people we had never met. The humans, they shame us with their nobility. The admission sent shock waves through the chamber. If the Crotheri, the most warlike species in the galaxy, were humbled by human behavior, what did that say about the rest of them? Director Vex High stood next, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. The Hegemony Intelligence Division monitored the entire battle, he said. We expected to document the destruction of Zephyrian civilization by either the swarm or the humans. Instead, we recorded the most selfless military action in galactic history. He activated his own display, showing casualty reports. Human losses: 6 ships destroyed, 4 ships severely damaged, over 3,000 personnel killed or wounded. Zephyrian civilian casualties: 0. Not a single non-combatant died under human protection. The numbers were staggering. The humans had taken devastating losses while achieving perfect protection of the people they had come to save. Furthermore, Vexai continued, analysis of human weapon usage shows they deliberately chose less effective weapons that would minimize collateral damage. They could have destroyed the swarm faster with their planet-killing devices, but refused to use them because of the risk to civilians. Elder Kithara nodded. They fought with one hand tied behind their backs because they cared more about our safety than their own efficiency. The Builder Emperor finally spoke, his ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia. I have observed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, he said slowly. I have seen species reach the heights of technological achievement, create art of unimaginable beauty, and develop philosophies of profound wisdom. But I have never seen a species that would die for strangers as readily as they would die for family. He paused, his mechanical form humming with processing power. The humans represent something new in our galaxy. They have achieved what we thought was impossible. They have made protection of others more important than their own survival. They have evolved beyond self-interest. The chamber was absolutely silent now. What do we do with this information? Hegemon Prime asked quietly. Elder Katara smiled, her crystalline form glowing brighter than before. We learn from them, she said. We ask them to teach us how to be better than we are. We beg them to share their wisdom about putting others first. She looked around the chamber one more time. And most importantly, we make sure that when they need help, we are there for them the way they were there for us. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Council voted to invite a species to join not because of their technology or their resources, but because of their character. The message was sent to the human fleet, still limping home toward their distant spiral arm. It was simple and direct. To Admiral Sarah Chun and the people of Earth, the galaxy has learned what it means to be truly civilized. We humbly request the honor of your friendship. We have much to learn from you about what it means to be worthy of the trust of strangers. The response came 3 days later in Admiral Chun's characteristic style. Request received and accepted. It would be our honor to serve alongside beings dedicated to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. See you among the stars. As the human ships disappeared into hyperspace, heading home to their quarantined Deathworld, the galaxy began the slow process of learning what it truly meant to be civilized. They had weapons and technology and art and philosophy, but they had never learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the strongest are those who use their strength to protect others. And sometimes the most advanced civilization is the one that values strangers' lives as much as their own. The humans had shown them the way. Now it was up to the galaxy to follow.